Hey everybody, welcome to the Art of Comics. This is the Alex Toth series, part 5. I'm your host, me, Andre Salazar, and I am super excited about this episode. I love Toth. I love what we've been doing lately, and I'm really just enjoying getting to know this artist's, this master's work. So we mentioned in episode 4 about standard comics, and I think maybe it was even a little bit of episode 3. His work he did with Standard after he left National. He did a couple years of work with Standard prior to going in the military, and when he was stationed in Japan and did the John Fury little strip for the military newspaper, Army newspaper, and all that. So before all that, he did Standard work for a couple years, and I found this book, and it is by Fantagraphics, Setting the Standard. Retails for $40. You can buy it cheaper, of course, other places. I bought this at Stuart Ing's shop in Torrance, California. He has a wonderful shop. It is literally my most favorite comic shop in ever, anywhere on the planet. Well, I like Powell Books a lot too in Portland, but Powell Books isn't really a comic shop. Stuart Ing's shop is more of comics and illustration. Anyway, I got this there. Great stuff. He is doing delivery, so a little shout out to him. This is Fantagraphics, and as you would know, just when I record it, this damn thing breaks apart. So this could just be my copy, but I have a feeling this is really crappily done. It's just a crappy glue. They should have put some more care to it because it is beast. It is like, it's over 400 pages long, and this flimsy kind of binding is just no good. It should have been oversewn, but that's me being a little bit of a stickler, being a guy who binds comics. So not happy about this thing freaking breaking apart. I'll put some glue here, but you do what you got to do. So let's just dive into this. This book goes into a lot of the stuff that the the IDW book went through. And so what's nice is this has like all these issues. I mean, he did this for 2 years. He just busted his hump this is 1952 to 1954. And as you know, he gets deployed in 54. So this is that time. And it covers everything. I think this is a complete. There might be a couple stories that are not in this that he did, but this is pretty damn comprehensive. He does an interview with, I believe it's with Gary Groth, the editor-in-chief. And, nope, I take that back. This interview's with, conducted by, it says, Vincent Davis, Richard Kyle, and Bill Spicer. So they worked on this, I guess, with him. It's very in-depth. It's really good. A lot of this is covered, like I said, in the IDW books, but I'll just mention a couple things. One thing that Alex mentions is his influences. Of course, everyone was really into Milton Caniff, things like that. His key influences were illustrators, because remember, while he was doing comics, he was also really interested in illustration, and that's where he got a lot of inspiration from. So John McDermott, Peter Helk, Albert Dorn, amazing. Austin Briggs, love Austin Briggs. We'll talk about him some more. A new book just came out about him about a month ago. I'm going to buy that. Robert Fawcett, I love Robert Fawcett. Noel Sickles, love Noel Sickles. So after all, he says, I aim for both fields, syndication and illustration. But Noel Sickles was your most important influence? Asked. He says, yes, he was and still is. He's a huge Noel Sickles fan, and we'll talk about Noel Sickles in another episode. I adore his work. Him and Fawcett are probably my favorites, although I like Briggs and Bernie Fughes as well, and Bob Peak. There's just a million. I could just sit here and go on and on. Okay. And that's all courtesy of Howard Chaykin, who really turned me on to all that stuff. So it goes into some of his history. I thought this was interesting too. He talks about Sickles. One of the things he learned from Sickles is, if I had to make a choice between anatomical accuracy and attitude, I take attitude. The body reflects thoughts and emotions. Massive Muscle doesn't. And that's kind of almost like a character animation kind of artist perspective, right? Of showing emotion through body and movement. There's a great book on that. Oh, it's over there. Drawn to Life. Let me grab it real quick. It's right here. This is a great book. Many of you guys have probably heard of this book called Drawn to Life. 20 Golden Years from the Disney Masterclasses by Walt Staunchfield. This is a wonderful book about animation. You can tell I'm only this far. So it's about drawing, it's about figures, it's about getting emotion, all that kind of stuff. This is a great book. And so, one of the principles of animation is getting emotion, all that kind of stuff. So that was interesting. So he talks about, after he quit DC, he went over to Standard and worked on these books. So this thing's falling apart. Super bummed by that, but again, it's just crappy thing. Okay, let's just start in the story. So what was interesting about these Standard stories are these were not, full 24-page, 22-page, now 20-page issues. These were short stories. A comic would be a series of 4 or 5 stories in that one issue, right? So he would do one of those, maybe a couple in one issue. And most of these are going to be romance stories and kind of crime. So romance, crime, and science fiction and war. So that's kind of the world. No superheroes, no spandex, none of that kind of stuff. This is just 2 years of him focusing on drawing people, right? And drawing people in normal circumstances, generally speaking, at least for the romance stuff. He studied a lot of the classics, a lot of the women of silent films, and he studied, Audrey Hepburn, things like that, and used that to kind of like influence his drawing and his women and making them better. He mentions in previous episode we talked about how he really wanted to focus on capturing women's beauty and things like that. So I loved all these panels of them kissing and close up. I think that's really cool. And I also like these things too with the little head. We don't see this anymore, and I'm gonna kind of use some of this, I think, because I really like this design. I also like these here. That's a great panel there too. So a lot of what I'm doing, you guys, I'm studying. I'm like straight up using this as a textbook. And I am going through these panel by panel, looking for things that I could use, that I can cheat off, that compositionally, showing emotion, how they're working together. This is a class, this is a way to like study. And remember, this is in the 50s. He's going to be drawing after the Zorro, which is a whole nother level. And then after that, he's going to do Bravo for Adventure, and then he goes in animation, and so he's continually honing his skills. But even in the 50s, when he's a young guy, he's like in his early 20s, he's kicking complete fanny. I really like a lot of these stories here. This one is about there's 2 buddies. They're both military friends, and they're looking for this black market that's selling like opium and contraband in Hanoi or someplace. And one of them falls in love with this madam, and it turns out the madam is doing this shady black market. The other one doesn't know that and thinks he's cheating on her, and so it's really kind of a fun little story. And they become buddies at the end. So you only got 6-8 pages to pull this off, but I think there's really kind of fun stories. It's a great panel. When you look at these, a lot of times, maybe not this one particularly, but a lot of times you'll see these great kissing. You can see these as black and whites, and so the way he spots his blacks, especially when we get into kind of sci-fi stuff, isn't it beautiful? You could see these could have been black and white comics. So it's interesting to then see on top of that the layer of colors that are on here and how they add to the story. But I would say if this was a black and white comic, it would work because of the way he's using his blacks, Some of this stuff, You don't see quite as much. These Joe Yank ones specifically, right? If this is a black and white comic, this would be beautiful. The colors are okay. It's flat, which actually I like the flat colors. But look at the way he's spotting these blacks, showing depth and into the work. The texture here on these helmets, the black here. He didn't have to do that, but he does. Look at this here, that full shadow here. Full shadow on the explosion, the black there. It's just perfect for a black and white comic. He doesn't use screen tones in this. There will be some other stories I think he will put some tones and textures, but usually he's not putting screen tones in these first ones here. And it's just these, yeah. So I love it. I think this one particularly could totally be black and white comic. I don't know if the color's really adding that much to this one. Some of the other ones, though, it does. I love this, too. I love the positioning of this stuff here. These really are... I mean, some of the stories are a little antiquated. Perhaps you would think, it's a little old school for our modern sensibilities. But as far as storytelling and how to compose panels and within panels, the page, this works very well still. I mean, that's a great panel. Just this idea of like showing the feet, with explosions around. Generally, you would think showing a face or the front part of the body, but just showing these feet, just what a great decision for that. It's a great shadow there too, and showing his face. Again, these Joe Yanks I think are really good. Great way to show action. Yeah, this looks like a black and white comic, dude. Some of this too, you get a little bit of like Hernandez brothers, things like that from it. I don't know how much necessarily they were influenced to this. They're more like Archie. But you can kind of see just the simple line, kind of the old school kind of look to it. I believe he did a lot of brush, but I'm not actually quite sure on a lot of his tools he used. He doesn't really go into that too much. But I don't think he was necessarily an innovator of tools. He just used what was commonly used and had a great technique with those tools, rather. So this is, that was kind of a fun story too. So they're all kind of these fun little quick stories. There's one, I really like this. I want to show you guys this. This is really kind of cool. This you can see, here you can really see, and hopefully the video, if you get this full screen, you can check out. Here's the reproduction, right? Here's what's in the comic, and here's his originals. Look at the difference of line quality. It is amazing. If you look here at this boat, how clean, how simple, and how just perfect that is. Here, you just lose all these lines. Just the reproduction just sucks. Here, look at her face, look at these hairlines, and you just don't get any of that. It's just gobbledygook with the crappy colors and the crappy printing. But you can see in here, and you can look at this, brilliant, beautiful line work, like sublime, like very nice, clean lines. He's not just using markers, and big, tech pens. He's using beautiful brush or quill lines, and you lose that. So it's a little bit of a bummer. If we could see it reproduced like this, it would be so much cooler. But it is what it is. Yeah, and these stories, the marriage stories are interesting because like a woman marries a guy, he turns out not to be the guy that she thought he was, but then she realizes, well, it was her fault for being a doofus in some way, and I love him, despite it or whatever. This is kind of a fun horror story where they go to this costume party of science fiction writers, and it turns out that the host was captured, and these people who they thought were in Halloween costumes are actually aliens, and they get captured by them. And so they captured all these sci-fi writers and stuff. It's kind of a fun little story. It's a great little, its little faces looking towards the future. Really, really good stuff. Again, I think for a fan of Toth's work and getting to see some of his older work, but yet still very competent and something you can learn from. I totally recommend Setting the Standard by Alex Toth. Brilliant positioning here and just composition of this stuff. These angles coming in, right? All this stuff is just broken up by thirds. These dynamic lines, even this here, just really move the eye across the page, seeing things, how, and this is a 9-panel grid, which we don't always see with him, but I guess he is using it in some spots here. Really good stuff. Oh, this was kind of fun with these cooks. And I really like the characterization of some of the stuff. Sometimes he'll go kind of a little bit cartoony, a little bit looser, or exaggerated. When I say cartoony, I mean kind of more exaggerated. These two cooks wind up having to be on the front line because all the soldiers are gone, and these Koreans are coming attacking, so they're having to fight them off, and it's kind of fun. The Phantom Ship, that's kind of a fun story too. So these are just really dug. Some of this reminds me of Wally Wood too, a little bit, right? It gives me a little bit of that Wally Wood kind of feel for that 50, that 50 sci-fi stuff. This was a fun story too, Blinded by Love. Woman is a love triangle, total love triangle. This gal is in love with these two guys, romantically with Lon Farrell, who's this like easygoing, happy-go-lucky, never worries. He's just like the man, the sexy time, having fun guy. Then there's Paul, who's like serious-minded. He loves her. He's dedicated, but he's kind of more of a homebody, right? She's more infatuated with him, but maybe more spiritual connected to him. They kind of are best friends since they were kids. She goes to both of them, with them to the prom, all this stuff. Well, they both go in the service. He goes the Air Force. He goes the Army. Come back after the war. She gets engaged to the flyboy. Everything's happy-go-lucky. They get in a car wreck. She gets wounded. She gets scarred up. What happens? He flies the coop. He's like, I can't handle these scars. Maybe we should postpone things. Totally breaks her heart. Doesn't see him again. Works in this like VA hospital. Finds out about the other guy, Paul, who she hasn't heard from in forever, is blind. He winds up, he gets injured in the war. He's blind, can't see her. They fall in love again. Then he gets an operation to see, and she's freaked out. And she's like, oh man, he's going to see me, and he's going to see these scars, and he's going to fall out of love. And he's like, no, dude, I can see you, Debbie, from here. Come here, you angel. You are an angel. Why, even the scars are beautiful to me because it's you. Oh, Paul, you're the most beautiful girl on earth to me. I mean, boom, just like straight up romance love right there. It's just great. So it's these kind of fun stories. This was great too, Crush Gardenia, about this kid. It's just kind of like a bad seed. He's just been bullied, and so he's a bully. And they kind of go through some kind of analysis. Why is he a bully? Why is he a jerk all the time? And he's after this girl that doesn't like him, and he winds up being a bit of a troublemaker and aggressive. It's a good story. So anyway, that's look at the great positioning there. It's great stuff. He does have that illustrator look. Now that you think about it, he does have that. Oh, look at that. That's great too. I haven't finished this, I'll be honest. I haven't finished all these back ones, but I wanted to kind of get this going and share it with you. I'm definitely going to finish reading it. It is really well done. This has got a lot. This is 400 pages of Toth, right? And this is like good comics. So totally recommend it. Totally think you can learn from it and study it. I'm a big fan. And, he didn't do that much for superheroes. Super Friends, of course, notwithstanding, but he, big chunks of his work in the early days are right here. So check it out. Fantagraphics has it. There you go. So thanks a lot. I appreciate you guys for watching the video, and stay tuned for episode 6 and we're going to talk about Zorro. So, part 6, we're going to go into Zorro. Where's my Zorro book I'm going to use? I just saw it just a second ago. Okay, here it is. We're going to go through the next book, will be this book, and we're going to just talk about Zorro until we get to the next IDW book. So we'll go through this next week. Remember, every Saturday until we finish the Toth series is going to be this. Tuesdays are my other videos, and then Thursdays I'll do tutorials, things like that sometimes. Thanks, guys. Have a good one. Bye.